Nobody teaches you how to want something and still be told no. We learn to win. We learn to prepare and rehearse and position ourselves. We learn to hedge our desires with qualifications, to want things quietly so the disappointment is smaller if it doesn't come. But nobody sits you down and says, sometimes you will offer yourself fully, your work, your love, your idea, your truth, and the answer will still be no. And you will have to decide what that means about you. You've spent your whole life learning how to succeed, how to prepare, how to improve, how to be enough. And somewhere in all that preparation, you absorbed a belief that most people never say out loud, but almost everyone carries. If you do everything right, if you show up genuinely, if you are truly yourself, you will be received, you will be chosen, you will fit. So you practiced, you got better, you made yourself more honest, more open, more present. You shed the performances you'd been hiding behind. You stopped saying what you thought people wanted to hear and started saying what was actually true. And then, you extended that truth to someone, or something, or somewhere that mattered. And it wasn't enough. Not because you failed, not because you were wrong, not even because they were wrong, but because sometimes the honest version of you, the real one, the one without armor, still doesn't get what it reached for. And that is a different kind of loss, because you can't even tell yourself you weren't really trying. Imagine a woman named Celeste, 29, sitting in a parking garage at 6:47 in the evening, hands still on the steering wheel. She'd just come from a meeting that had ended the way she knew it would, but hoped it wouldn't. A project she'd built over 14 months, something she actually believed in, something she'd stayed up past midnight for, not out of anxiety, but out of genuine care. The committee said no, kindly, carefully, no. She sat there and didn't cry right away. She just held it, the strange weight of a no that you can't argue with, not because the committee was cruel, not because they misunderstood her, but because they understood her perfectly, and still decided the answer was no. What do you do with that? There's a version of Celeste that drives home and spends the next 3 weeks picking apart every choice she made, replaying the presentation, wondering if she'd framed it differently, dressed differently, spoken louder or softer, or with more data or less emotion, wondering if the problem was her, specifically and permanently. That version of Celeste would be understandable. That version of Celeste would have a lot of company. But there's another version, the one who sits in that parking garage and eventually exhales, not because it doesn't hurt, but because she remembers something she'd learned slowly, through smaller losses, over years. What you do after the no is the only thing you actually control. She didn't protect herself from the rejection by wanting less. She didn't hedge. She didn't perform. She went in fully, and it wasn't chosen. And somehow, she has to find a way to let that be okay. Here's what no one tells you about rejection. It doesn't mean you were wrong. We've been trained to use outcomes as evidence. If it worked, you were right. If it didn't, you were wrong. And that logic is so built into us, so invisibly woven into how we evaluate ourselves, that we almost never question it. But think about what that framework actually demands of you. It demands that you only extend yourself when you're guaranteed a return. It demands that you protect your authenticity behind a wall of calculation. Only being real when being real is safe. Only being vulnerable when vulnerability is certain to be rewarded. And slowly, over time, that version of you stops being you at all. The paradox is this: the people who never risk rejection are also the people who are never truly known. Because being truly known requires showing something that might not be accepted. It requires handing something real to someone who might hand it back. The strength to be rejected is not the same as the strength to endure punishment. It is the strength to remain open, to keep the door inside you unlocked, even after someone walks past it. That's different from being reckless. It's different from ignoring your own discernment. It means choosing, deliberately, to not let a no collapse your sense of what was worth offering. The no doesn't erase what you built. It doesn't unmake the 14 months. It doesn't mean the care was wrong or the vision was hollow. It means the answer, this time, from this direction, was no. And you get to decide whether that's the end, or just the shape this particular story took. This is where it gets uncomfortable. Because what I'm describing isn't easy, and it doesn't get easier just because you understand it. Knowing that rejection is survivable doesn't make being rejected feel survivable. Knowing that your worth isn't determined by one decision doesn't stop that decision from landing like it does. You will still feel it, in your chest usually, that specific hollowness that isn't quite sadness and isn't quite anger. It's something quieter and heavier than both. And here's the part no one wants to say. The people who live with the most authenticity are not the people who stop feeling that. They're the ones who feel it and go again. Not immediately, not from a place of performing resilience, but eventually, genuinely, they go again. Because the alternative is a kind of slow withdrawal. You stop sending the application, you stop having the conversation, you stop showing the work. You protect yourself so thoroughly from the possibility of no, that you also protect yourself from every yes that was waiting. And the loss of those yeses is silent. It doesn't announce itself. You never see the thing that didn't happen. You just notice, years later, that something in you got smaller, that you got safer, that you started wanting less, not because your desires changed, but because wanting had started to feel like too much of a risk. That's the real cost of fearing rejection, not the rejection itself, the shrinking. The strength to be rejected is not the strength to be broken. It's the strength to offer, knowing the answer might be no. To care about something enough to put it forward, even without a guarantee. To let yourself be seen, clearly, by people who may look and then look away. That takes more courage than most people will ever admit, because the world rewards certainty. It applauds confidence. It celebrates the people who seem unbothered, who present themselves as already whole, already chosen, already enough. But underneath every person you admire for their openness, there is a history of no's they absorbed and kept going anyway. You don't have to stop wanting things because wanting is painful. You don't have to harden yourself to avoid disappointment. You don't have to earn the right to care by first becoming indifferent. You just have to build the muscle that stays soft under pressure. The one that lets you feel the no, fully, honestly, without pretending, and still believe the thing you offered was worth offering. Because it was. Because you were. Stay open. The yes you don't know about yet is still out there, but only for the version of you that didn't give up on reaching.